The way that we measure the efficiency of water heaters is by energy factor. Energy factor takes into account both the combustion efficiency and the standby losses. The standby losses are really what we lose when we heat water, store it in a tank, and just wait to use it. In fact, the minimal efficiencies for tank-style water heaters, 30 to 50 gallons, are 0.613 to 0.575. To learn more about water heaters, let's go meet Philip Wallace. How do you engineer a water heater to be 95% efficient?
Well, actually, it's pretty simple. What we're looking for is we're looking for a burner, for example, that's very efficient, that will efficiently produce heat. We're looking for a water heater that will transfer the heat to the water very efficiently, a design that will do that. And then we're looking for a water heater that will actually retain the heat once it's in the water. And you do that, of course, with insulation.
Can you explain the difference between energy factor and thermal efficiency?
Well, energy factor is a calculated number that's actually calculated from a series of tests that the Department of Energy has created, that all residential water heaters are tested to under a certain BTU input limit.
The energy factor takes into account the standby losses, and that's why that number is always lower?
That's correct. It takes, and the recovery efficiency, which is used to calculate that number, is a little bit different test. A thermal efficiency is actually a measure of how much heat is produced goes into the water. But they both get at the same thing, how much heat goes into the water.
What are the important things to look for when shopping for a water heater?
Well, Steve, when purchasing a gas water heater, of course, the first thing you want to know is you want to know that you have the proper fuel, because gas water heaters work on natural gas or they work on LP or propane gas. And of course, each gas has a special model for that. So you want to know which fuel you have. The other thing you want to do is you want to look at the ability of the water heater to actually produce and give you hot water. That's a combination of two things. That's a combination of how much water is in the tank and how hot that is. And it's also a combination of how much water the water heater can heat in an hour. That's also called recovery in gallons per hour. The other thing, of course, you want to look for is what is the warranty. Warranties range from 6 years to 9 years and even 12 years, and there are even some lifetime water heaters out there. The other thing you want to look for with a gas water heater is how is this going to be vented. There are several different methods of venting gas water heaters. One is just vent through the roof with an atmospheric vent. Another one is to use a direct vent, and that basically takes all the air for combustion from outside the home and puts all the byproducts of combustion right back outside the home, so it isolates the water heater from the home. A third option is a direct power vent, which basically uses a power burner and actually sucks the air from outside the home through PVC pipe, and then it actually powers the air outside the home or blows the air outside the home using PVC pipe also. And if you're going to do space heating, you can also look for a water heater that has a real high recovery rate or a high thermal efficiency too, so that you can actually heat your home with your water heater.
One of the advantages of a direct vent or a power vent is that you don't have to worry about backdrafting.
That's exactly right. And today's modern homes, they're engineered to be very tight, to be very efficient. So what happens if you have any kind of exhaust out the home, for example, if you have an exhaust from exhaust fan in your kitchen, it can create a negative pressure in the home. And with a standard water heater, that negative pressure can actually suck air down the vent and actually keep the water heater from venting properly. So a direct vent water heater actually solves that problem.
What about pilot lights?
Well, pilot lights do use energy, of course, and some of that energy actually does escape out the water heater. There's a flue in the middle of the water heater, and some of the heat from the pilot will actually go up the flue and actually out the vent, and therefore you have some extra standby heat loss. Whereas if you have a model that has intermittent ignition, then there is no standing pilot, so you don't get the heat loss from the pilot. However, if you're going to install an intermittent ignition water heater, the thing you got to remember is you're going to have electricity available.
Important information, Philip. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Steve.
If you'd like to learn more about how to make water heating more efficient, check out the other videos on this site. And don't forget the importance of installation. We have a video that explains some great tips on how to install a water heater.